Greetings, friends. Thank you for listening to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archies, the only nonprofit that is dedicated to preserving the history of massage and bodywork. Because of people like you, the Society of Massage Archies exists. History isn't just something that we store away, it's something that we can learn from. When historical knowledge is integrated into education, it deepens understanding, sharpens critical thinking, and strengthens professional identity. Thanks to our Founders Club, 50 individuals who stepped up to help build our foundation. Still this work is still underway. That support is helping connect the past to the present through educational outreach, bringing history into classrooms, conversations, and continuing education. But meaningful education doesn't happen by accident. It takes attention, resources, and ongoing support. We are building tools and opportunities that help practitioners and students alike understand not just what we do with our hands, but where it comes from and why it matters. As a 501c3 nonprofit, Soma is working to ensure that massage history becomes a living part of education, not just an afterthought. If you believe that understanding our past strengthens the future of our profession, we invite you to become a recurring contributor. Whether it's $20 a month or any amount that feels right to you, every gift helps to sustain Soma's educational mission year-round. Because history doesn't teach itself. People have to bring it forward. Learn more about becoming a recurring supporter today at societyofmassagearchives.org. Thank you. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the Society of Massage Archives. These views and commentaries represent the recollections of both the hosts and the guests, and as such are subject to the occasional slight inaccuracies. The content here is for informational and educational purposes only. You should conduct your own historical research when determining the veracity of any of the statements made within.
Greetings and welcome to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives, where we delve into the rich tapestry of massage therapy's past, explore its evolution, and share the stories that have shaped this vital practice. Today is Monday, April 6th, 2026. I'm your host, Kirby Clark Ellis, and I'm joined today with Nathan Nordstrom. Nathan is a nationally recognized massage therapy educator and training leader with over 20 years of experience, advancing professional standards in education, compliance, and clinical practice. He has designed and led scalable training systems for higher education institutions, national associations, and multi-unit spa organizations, supporting thousands of therapists across the U.S. and Canada. As founder of Educated Touch and former director of training and industry relations at Hand and Stone Franchise Company. Nathan specializes in curriculum design, train the trainer programs, and aligning education with real-world practice. He is a frequent national and international lecturer. Greetings and welcome, Nathan. I know there's a lot more to that bio that doesn't always fit nicely in so many characters, so I can't wait to get into our conversation.
I love limiting words to a 100-word bio or a 200-word bio because it's like, okay, that's not important. Okay, we're not going to talk about that. There's so much to life that when you start living it, you start realizing day by day, you're building your new future. And you're building a resume that you don't think is going to be amazing until you start getting past those first 10 years and 20 years and 25 years that you go, oh, I did do some stuff.
I'm sure that there's a dichotomy that lives inside all of us, Nathan, but and even based off of our pre-interview conversation about always having something going on, at least in the back of your mind, something planned. I find it hard to believe that you've amassed the career that you have just living in the moment. And I can't wait to hear how that has shaped and evolved and blossomed petal by petal, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, the concept of living in the moment is crucial because you've got to be there. But if you don't have an eye to the future to see what that next step looks like, what that next hurdle looks like, or the things you might have to do to overcome some challenges, those are the things that really do help understanding what this moment is available for, what that next up is, what that next growth is. So yeah, there's a lot to life, and I'm just glad that I get to live it.
I love that perspective, and I think it fits in squarely and very nicely with an eye and a mind about history. Then we like to start at the beginning. Tell me what pulled you into the world of massage therapy and bodywork.
Well, it's so interesting because I didn't know what I knew when I started. My dad was a chiropractor. He was a chiropractor in Canada where I was born, and when he moved back to the United States, because he was a U.S. citizen, when he came back to the U.S., they had implemented a national exam. Well, at that time, he had 6 children, and he had been in practice for over 10 years, about 10 years, and he couldn't pass the exam and just continued to go, well, what else can I do? Well, when I was born, we were living in Utah, and he was actually working as a massage therapist in Utah, just simply because he had the tactical skills and he could work at this resort and kind of really help out and do things. And once again, I was a baby, so I didn't know anything. But then we moved to Oregon, and as I was raised in Oregon majority of my life, my dad would always have friends and family who were like, hey, I got this thing with my neck, I've got this thing with my back, And so they would come over and my dad would call me in and he'd say, "Hey, Nathan, look at this." And from about the age of 6 to 16, I was kind of my dad's little helper, just kind of figuring out why bodies were responding were the way they were, what kind of things, what pressures changed things, what resistance was there. And then, of course, at 16, you think your parents are stupid, so I decided I didn't care about what my dad thought of me. And at that time, I hadn't even thought of massage therapy as a career. I just kind of thought that was something you do for friends and family and take care of. At 19 to 21, I went on a church mission, and when I came home, I met this really nice girl. I thought she was outstanding. She was the bee's knees, and her best friend had just graduated from massage therapy school. And at that moment, I went, "Wait a second, that's a career? I can do that. That would be awesome." And so my girlfriend at that time, now my wife for 20 plus years, we went to the local massage school that she graduated from and did a little interview process. And she's like, "When was your last massage?" And I said, "I don't think I've ever had a professional massage. I've had massage my entire life. I mean, being able to have a dad who could kind of work out a knot and friends and family. I was a choir boy in high school. So sitting in choir, you almost had someone always on each other's shoulders. So it was kind of natural in my life. And so my girlfriend and I then went and got a massage at the school to kind of have our first professional massage. And at that point, I went, I know what I'm doing and I know what I want to do with it. I know that I can manage people's stress and anxiety, their tension, and help them have a better life by helping them understand why their body is resisting in the different ways that it was. And so as I went to massage school, I was looked at as kind of the guy who knew stuff, and not all stuff. I definitely was a short timer in I mean, pathology, I actually had to take twice. I don't tell a lot of people that, but now I'm telling the world that. The first time I took pathology, I just was not getting it. It was partially the instructor, it was partially me, but it just wasn't getting through. And one of the things that I loved is when I had to retake that class for a quarter. And that was the only class I could take. I couldn't take any other distracting classes, the fun classes, the hands-on classes. I had to just do pathology. And by the time I got done, I was so grateful I had to retake that class because my brain comprehended the aspect of when anatomy and physiology goes wrong. And the majority of the classes that I teach are associated with the anatomy and physiology and how it goes wrong, associated with that pathology. And if I wouldn't have retaken that, I wouldn't have had the knowledge or the skill set to teach the stuff that I do to really help massage therapists get to the place where they need to be when someone comes in and they say they have ankylosing spondylitis or they've got Down syndrome or they've got all these other conditions to kind of go, wait, let's figure this out. And so really, I guess that's where it started with a natural intention without knowing it. And then when I found out about it, it was a quick yes. This is definitely where we need to go.
I'm finding a lot. I took a lot of rich notes, Nathan. I'm loving what you're saying so far. Sounds like you had a very body centric and touch positive upbringing with your father being a chiropractor of many years. You say your father did massage. Was that through a official massage license in either Utah or Oregon?
Yeah, good question. So when he came down from having a Canada massage license and came down to the US, in Utah, there was no licensing in 1977. And so he had no need for a license. And the spa that he was working at, they noticed he had tactical skills and knew what he was doing. And so he just continued to practice. I think that was probably only about 2 years that he practiced in Utah before we moved. I think I was 6 weeks old when we moved to Oregon. And in Oregon, he actually had every odds and ends job throughout my childhood. So he didn't really have a touch practice in Oregon. He just kind of helped people whenever there was friends and family around just to kind of make sure that they were feeling good. So the concept of having a paid professional career in touch therapy, once again, that's another reason why it never hit me, was because no, you just touch friends and family to help them feel better. That's not really a job because I mean you just kind of help people. And so that diverted me from even thinking of it as a career path until I got back and realized that there's colleges that you go to for this. And I went, yes, there is. Let's do this.
Gotcha. So it sounds like learning that there is a formal education process is really what made it click for you.
Absolutely. And knowing that there was some required structure. I know in the school I went to, East West College of Healing Arts in Portland, Oregon, outstanding school. Just everything that they had. The structure that I went to as that school was going through its transition, it actually had your core curriculum and electives, and you got to choose your electives. And that for me was so beneficial because then I could say, you know what, I need to know more of Eastern philosophy. I need to know more of deep tissue. I need to know more of structures integration, kind of helping me build out my curriculum. Now my curriculum was 661 hours, which who knew that that would be a number of value in the future, because 660 really kind of hit that national standard, and I went, oh, got that covered. We're good there. Where most schools were at 500, even in Oregon was under 500, and that entry level program for my school was at 530, 540, somewhere in there. And I was like, I need a couple extra to feel confident and comfortable. And so I was very happy to have a solid program that supported me with a multitude of different instructors to kind of see the different values and concepts that were in the standards of what massage therapy is.
Can't resist a little sidebar. It makes sense to me that they would have a very robust training experience there because they've been licensing since 1951, the same year as Arkansas.
You're right. Oregon has been such a beneficial initial licensure state for me, because when I was going to school, I was getting ready to graduate, and I was excited about that. And as I graduated in late March, I signed up for the national certification exam because at that time the Oregon Board of Massage Therapy had a practical and a written exam.
Hmm.
And so I took the national certification exam as kind of a pre-test to see if I was going to do okay. Well, as a very dyslexic individual, I am so dyslexic it's painful. One of the things that I had to do was see if I could read the test in enough time. So I got through the national exam and I passed. And I thought, I don't know how that happened, but I'm so pumped to finally get my license in Oregon because I'm board certified, but I'm not yet state licensed. So I was sitting there just tapping my fingers, waiting for the exam. Now, at that time, they were doing the written exam twice a year,
Hmm.
because this was way before Emblex. And so we would go to this auditorium, and all the massage therapists for that 6 months were standing out front. And they'd open the doors, and you would go find your seat, and you'd sit down. And then they had those little short tables, so those narrow tables, and they would give you your first portion of the exam. You would take that portion, you would then bring it up to them. They would give you your second portion. You would take that second portion, and then you'd go to lunch.
Hmm.
And almost always you're going to lunch with other massage therapists who are taking the exam. You're like, how was it? Oh, we can't talk about this. Yeah, right. And so people were talking about all different kinds of subjects and topics and that kind of stuff. And everyone was like, I don't know if that's the one that I already took or the one that I still have to take, because then you'd come back and you'd take the third section of the exam. Now, in that unique challenge, they then have to grade all of those tests, and those were all handwritten tests. And so they would go through and they would hand check them all and get them out, and then they'd let you know if you passed about 6 to 8 weeks after. After that, they then would call you back to get you set up for a practical interview. So you would go, at that time, you went to a hotel. The hotel, they actually would move the beds to the side of the room so that you could set up the massage table. And at that time, you also brought your own body. And then they got rid of that really quick because they didn't want people cheating. But you'd bring your own body, and you would get them on the table, and you would go through a practical evaluation. Once again, this is twice a year. So if you knew you would fail one or the other, you had 6 months before you actually had the next opportunity. And so as you would go through that practical exam, you would be just biting your nails waiting to find out. Finally, they let me know that I passed. I'm like, I have my national and I have my Oregon. I am ready to go. And so I got my license. I had, let's see, I had my national certification and my license, which was renewing on April every other year. And so it was really nice to have all of that, because I actually got the Emblex on my birthday in 2001.
Hmm.
No, hold on, 2000. 2000.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so it was a lot of fun to just kind of see the process. And then later on, as I actually started volunteering for the AMTA and became AMTA Oregon's chapter president, being able to support the legislation and the transition from having a state run exam to having something that's nationally structured to kind of give support. I mean, I also served as a examiner for the Oregon Board of Massage Therapy for I think 6 months, where I could help just kind of make sure that everyone was doing what they were doing. Boy, that was a long time ago, but yes, that, it was a lot of fun to see that and to kind of give that. At that time, they were doing it on a weekly basis. They actually changed their office to a. This is so going down a whole rabbit hole, but hey, it's history, so we're good. So they changed from a small office to a larger office that actually had 2 or 3 treatment rooms built into the office, so that you would actually go in and do practical interviews in the office, and they would have to go and sit in the waiting room, and then you would call them back, and then they would go through. I have hysterically great stories of that as well, so we'll get there if we need to.
I am appreciating all of this context and nuance that you're sharing about the licensing practices in Oregon at the time, Nathan, because I don't, people have shared a little bit here and there. I don't think anybody has gone as far in depth as you have, and I'm eating that up right now, Nathan. So thank you.
Well, I'm going to give you a little more feed here then, because if you don't know Patty Glenn in the world of massage therapy, you should reach her and search out who she is. She's an amazing individual. She was the Oregon Board, the director, at the same time as I was the chapter president. And so we actually worked really good together in just kind of figuring out what's going on, where things are at. And so whenever I saw some challenge, I'd kind of toss it to her. Whenever she saw some challenge, she'd toss it to me. And it was such a great symbiotic relationship for a state licensing board and a chapter to have. We strive to like modulate that to other states to kind of remember to tell the chapter presidents, go talk to your exec director for the board and find out what they like. Find out what their favorite candy is, or find out what they do on Saturdays, and just kind of give them a little bit of kindness. And it started building some of those relationships at times, and it has had bumpy roads in different ways in different times. But it's so nice to really kind of have that personal one-on-one in those types of scenarios to really have things flourish. And then her connection with FSMTB and kind of in that process and getting that development. I was literally sitting right there getting ready to go from the state chapter to the national board. And so all of that transition time of kind of what is growing and developing in the profession, I was watching in my own process, which was such a glorious thing to see, to kind of just see manipulation change, but development in all stages.
I'm so excited to hear more, Nathan. I am going to redirect us back to your early days, though, just for a little bit longer. One thing that you said at the start of this interview is that you and your then girlfriend, your now wife, both got a massage at the school there. It sounds like that is really the moment where it all came together. Not only did you realize that it could be a career, but it also sounds like that's where you really stepped into it and owned it for yourself. Am I getting that part of the story correct, Nathan? That it was the student clinical massage that you received there, that everything that was the final nail in the coffin, so to speak?
Good draw, because initially I would have said no, and my gut was just kind of no, because there was a couple of those pieces. First of all, I knew my now wife's friend, and I saw what she was doing, and that she was looking at processing and developing, and she was very much like me, a clinically minded, treatment based individual, where she's like, yeah, we can do relaxation, but let's figure out why we're doing relaxation, and is that the best practice, or is there something structurally we need to stabilize. And her brain was kind of dripping into my brain, so Bonnie was a huge benefit to kind of look at, because when I went to that student clinic, I had a mediocre massage, and my wife had a pretty crappy massage. She didn't think it was a great massage, and it was kind of awkward for her. And I was like, it was okay, but I saw how they did it. I saw their structure and their outline and kind of what is expected in clinic. And so I wouldn't have said that was the turning point. I'd say I probably, during the interview, when they asked me to write a paper on why I want to become a massage therapist, and I went, I don't know. I actually took a lot of moments there and a lot of prayer internally just to kind of go, is this what I want to do, and why do I want to do it? Is there something else I want to do? I actually spent a little time in the community college before that where I was like, what are the careers? And they gave you that test and they said, okay, let's figure out what your career path looks like. And they ask you all these questions. And I took that and I wrote it all out. And the first thing that they suggested I be was a pastor.
Hmm.
I went, I belong to a church that has a volunteer leadership. There is no paid clergy in my church. And so I was like, well, I'm going to be absolutely broke if I go that direction. And so my life has always been being a spiritual leader, a guide, a support, help people overcome their dysfunctions and their limitations. And so that's been my ministry per se. But when I started looking at massage and the ways that we can help people physically, and I'm going to go on a spiritual realm here just slightly, the power of touch, the laying on of hands, those types of things have a physical as well as a spiritual connection. And there have been times when I have had clients on my table that they have gone, I see a whole new realm of reality and potential simply because I'm not being distracted by my physical aches and pains.
Yeah.
And do I feel like I've healed them in the spiritual sense? No, I don't. But I do feel like that touch that has been given by man, God, whoever, however, it has been a piece to really assist in that development of my human touch. So in massage school, I would say it's probably that one-page essay that I had to write on why I want to become a massage therapist because the massage experience was mediocre.
Thank you for sharing that, Nathan. Is the school clinic that you went to the college that you would eventually end up attending yourself as a student?
It absolutely was.
Okay,
It
cool.
was. And in my mind, when I went there, I knew that that was where I wanted to go. I did a little bit of search. This was before the internet really kind of helped us figure out where things were. There's a couple of other schools in the area. The other well-known school was well known for more hippie alternative kind of connection. And I wanted a more inclusive model of education. And that school having the elective system, I was like, absolutely, I want to know exactly what I'm looking for.
Gotcha. I think before we close out a little bit on your origin to massage as a career, you mentioned you had just gotten back from a church mission. You mentioned that you spent some time in prayer and also maybe like this alternative pathway that didn't quite work out exactly like that as far as the option of being a pastor. Could we touch a little bit on faith and spiritual practice, Nathan?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and one of the things as a child the concept of religion was very strong. As I said, I was the youngest of 6 kids. When I was 2, my parents had a 7th child who died of crib death. And that sudden infant death syndrome really helped our family solidify on that there is an afterlife, that there is something that our sister is now in that could kind of give us some spiritual guidance, can give us some support. And being raised in that, and actually that people talk about having a guardian angel or some sort of spiritual guide, I felt like my sister was behind me in everything that I did. Now, as I talked about my dad, my dad being a chiropractor, he has a energetic skill set that is absurd. My wife still will call my dad and say, hey, I've got a headache. Could you work on me? Well, he lives in Oregon and we live in Kentucky. And she, about 20 minutes later, will have the headache gone and she'll be like, yeah, your dad helped me with the headache. And I'm like, I don't get it. I know it's there. I know it works. And I know God created things that work. And so, however that is, I've never been contrary to understanding the complementary alternative medicine and the energetic system. However, I couldn't grab it the way that my dad did. I've used, and in massage school, we actually did have an energetics class. And And I learned about grounding and centering. And I experienced points where, okay, I can see that energy worked and went from me. But if I can't gauge it or recognize it, it's harder for me to grasp it, to quantify it. And so that's where my dad, he's got that quantified ability to kind of go, okay, that much energy right here, right here, right here, and the world just goes right. So spirituality, I'm still active in my church, still love not only volunteering for a church, but also volunteering for my job. And actually, I guess that's something in my early days that we should probably touch on because as a child, my parents talked about the law of the tithe or tithing.
Mm.
Told me, hey, you know what? If you believe in something, give 10% of your earnings to it. And there was a lot of things that I watched my parents do where they're like, "Ah, I'm just tithing my time." And I went, that's a thing. That makes sense to me. It drove home. If you love something or you are inspired by it, you should tithe to it. Give some of your time to it. And even when I started out in massage, I was like, you know what? I'm going to tithe my time to the profession. So 10% of my professional career, so that's 4 hours a week, I would be helping the profession grow in some way. And so let that be with AMTA, Alliance for Massage Therapy Education, the Massage Therapy Foundation, the National Certification Board. Any of these groups, I've said, you know what? I can put in 4 hours a week to help something that's bigger than me that can stabilize the profession. And that's been that early on because I mean I became chapter president at a young age. I think I'm the youngest AMTA national president that has been in. So I mean those are those things that go in the future, but starting with tithing your time, if you truly love what you do, get yourself out of the treatment room. Find a greater purpose. And when you find that greater purpose and you're like, I'm helping out here, it's going to help you endlessly more than spending another 4 hours in the treatment room.
I kind of love what you're saying. I love this idea of really quantifying it as if you're working a 40-hour week, 10% of that is 4 hours. Imagine if every practitioner in this country gave 4 hours in some capacity back to the profession. I mean, even if that was like if you spent 4 hours a week writing your own personal blog and getting more information disseminated to the masses, imagine imagine the world we could be living in, Nathan.
Okay, so let's do this because if you're not doing 40 hours a week, you're doing 20 hours a week. Maybe you're doing 10 hours a week. Whatever your schedule is, even if you're doing 20 hours a week and you say, you know what, I'm going to spend 2 hours each week, that's 8 hours a month going to something greater to develop, to grow. That's quantifiably, I mean, 350,000 massage therapists, that adds up weekly to a lot of great work that can be done. Even if you're doing it horribly, and I have to say, I have done a lot of volunteer work in a horrible way.
Yeah,
Not intentionally, but just because I didn't know what I was doing.
sure.
And and that gives you a lot of freedom to say, I'm not good, but I can help and I can learn from it and I can do better next time. And a lot of my stories kind of that got me to where I am come from screwing up, doing better, and moving forward so that I can do better for that next thing to get that growth and that development.
For sure. I guess just one last thing while we're still circling around the realm of spiritual practice, Nathan. Church of Latter-day Saints, also known Mormonism, correct me if I'm wrong. Is there anywhere in either your entry day education or later on in your career where massage and bodywork has really brushed up against your spiritual background?
Good question. The answer is no. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints holds health and well-being in high regard. I mean, we have a law of health, and that law of health includes eating right, not taking drugs, alcohol, tobacco, those types of things. And really that law of health includes the things that would make your body strong and healthy. It does not specifically talk about massage therapy on one side or the other. However, I think no matter where you go, you're going to get an idiot. And there have always been people inside and outside of my religion who goes, oh, you're a masseuse? I'm not. My go-to answer, which I still use to this day, I didn't realize I was doing this early on. I said, well, I can never be a masseuse. And they're like, what? I said, a masseuse is a female person who rubs you for sexual gratification, who's French. I'm not French. I'm not a female, and I'm not going to be doing that.
Yeah.
And it usually takes their mind and goes, wait, he didn't get mad at me. He didn't address me as if I was dumb. I just informed people and just said, oh, no, I'm not French and I'm not a lady. So, I mean, if I was French, I could be a masseur, but even with that, that's not kind of what we're going for. So I'm sorry. And a lot of times they'd go, oh, he's calm and he's talking about health issues and how to help and how to grow. That's not what he does. And so being able to open that up, and really in so many of the different congregations or wards that I've been in the church, that they're called wards, I usually find a couple other massage therapists. They're like, oh, you're a massage therapist too? Oh, it's so nice to see that there's a couple of us. And I'm like, how many more do we have? Well, Sister Jones is, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's great. And then usually they find a YouTube video or something where I've been teaching. They're like, Nathan's a leader in this playing. He talks about it, and they usually get strong. So every once a month they have something called Fast and Testimony Sunday, which that's where anyone can get up and bear their testimony. And it was funny as a young man when I'm talking about my career. I mean, I was 22 when I became a massage therapist.
Mhm.
And so at 22, I'm on a Fast and Testimony Sunday. I go up and I start talking about how blessed I am and how grateful I am for the gospel of Jesus Christ in my life and for how it's helped those people who I work with as a massage therapist. And I'm doing this over the pulpit. And there's 100, 200 people sitting there who are understanding that massage therapy is what my passion and my career is, but yet I can still be a testimony bearing, faithful individual who believes and can really progress in society in all the things that I do. And so I never really got a massive kickback. I know other people have had pastors or, oh, you shouldn't do that. I know when I was teaching in massage school, we had students who were like, oh, my family doesn't support me becoming a massage therapist. And I'm like, let's talk about this so you can bring some support back to your family on what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
Because there's a misunderstanding there.
So it doesn't sound like there was much misunderstanding between your faith-based community and your the other side of your career.
Right.
I love that. I do have one more question about the
Bring
church.
it.
As far as history goes, I understand that the church is involved quite a bit in archiving, and particularly it's helped a lot of work in genealogy. Am I correct? Can you speak to any
Oh,
of
yeah. Yeah, so genealogy has been a big practice in the LDS Church for many different reasons. So if we go to the spiritual front, there's several scriptures that talk about knowing your ancestors and learning from their experience. But then there's also this other aspect that the LDS Church really focuses on, and that is that concept of baptism. That baptism is a gateway into into heaven. Without it, you just can't get there. And so, because that is a physical activity that is required, that is one of those gates that the church has looked at and has connected with. Wait a second. There have been multiple generations. So the 1820s is when Joseph Smith was around. He's like, well, if we go to all the generations of the past, if they don't have baptism by the proper authority, then they're lost. And so it became this very important purpose for the church to kind of go, what can we find out about these people? Can we get their names? Can we do baptisms in proxy for them? And so that was brought by Joseph Smith to the prophet, or to God, and Revelation said, yes, in temples, baptisms for the dead are a thing that is a standard process. And so a lot of genealogy is finding out who your parents were, who your great grandparents were, who your great great grandparents were, and creating that family tree so you can go, wait a second, here's my lineage, here's how all of that connects. And we want to make sure that those chains are appropriately connected. Now, once again, just because someone's baptized does not mean they are ever going to make it to heaven. We've got no loo to say, oh, this stamped out that horrible, evil, awful individual. I mean, I don't know if Adolf Hitler has been baptized for the dead, but he's going to be responsible for his stuff. So I'm not going to ever think that is there. But being able to hit the ability to connect that way, as a child, I always thought it was obnoxious and boring. until I started seeing pictures of my grandfather, my great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, and seeing that my brother looks just like him, seeing that my other brother looks just like my great-great-grandfather, and I was like, dang, and then great uncles and all that kind of stuff, and going, that's an interesting genetic dynamic, especially since I'm 6'1", and my oldest brother is, I think, 5'7", 5'8", and he has an olive complexion, and I have pasty white complexion, and we both came from the same mother and father. And being able to say, huh, now let's look for on my mom's side, and we can see replication of my brother. And we can see how those all come together. So genetics and that kind of stuff became interesting to me because of genealogy and being able to see it. Now, XY chromosomes and kind of getting all that kind of stuff and looking at the genes, that was not going to be an exciting thing for a dyslexic individual who could mix up all of those for anything. But when you can get a visual connection saying, I have blue eyes, my brother has brown eyes. I come from a blue-eyed dad and a brown-eyed mom. Okay, how does that all... It created a reality to me. And so the church really kind of pushed for, you should know 4 or 5 generations back. And in usually as you get into a couple of generations, if you find royalty, you go all the way back to Adam pretty darn quickly. But the ones that are more exciting to me are the paupers, the peasants, and being able to get to, hey, you know what, in England there was this peasant, and the only way we know he was a peasant was because he worked for this royal, and that's where that connection is. But then trying to get genealogy from them and get that historical piece, a lot of times that's an old family Bible, or that is a old family record. But maybe the property was owned by multiple generations or leased by the royals for multiple generations. And so being able to find all that kind of stuff is enjoyable to really kind of connect with the historical aspect.
Yeah, I love it. History can be exciting. Who knew?
It can. So the other kind of side to the question that you had was, yeah, the church actually has an archive, and it is in the mountains of Utah. It literally is bored in, and they've got all sorts of historical documents and connections, and not only for the church, because really 1820, that's 200 years ago. So that's not a large archive for that, but even going through and supporting other countries in their archiving and connecting with their information, and then offering, hey, we can store it in the mountains and have it be secured in vaults that are all safe and connected. The church really feels that it's strong and important to have the history connected current day as well as in the past.
I love that. I can't resist. So yeah, thank you for sharing a little bit more on that for us, Nathan.
Sure.
Entry level days, got some questions for you. You said the East West College of Healing Arts. Was that, and I'm assuming because was an elective program as well, and you got more hours than their baseline curriculum was, I'm assuming there was a cast of instructors and not just one person that led everything.
Yeah, so the school is very connected and has specialists in each topic, which to me was so beneficial to be able to see why other people do the things they do. One of my electives was myofascial release. And so Miss Fox was the myofascial release instructor, and she knew what she was doing. She also taught A and P1. And so being able to have a instructor for 2 classes is very different than having your instructor for the entire program. And so I had a deep tissue specialist, I had a Thai massage specialist, and so each of those electives really had someone who wasn't just okay at it, but actually had gone to Thailand or had dealt with this or connected with that. And so each of those specialists coming in really gave me a more well-rounded experience in my own experience, and later on it actually modeled the curriculum that I wanted to have seen in education going into the future.
Do you think having that system set up of electives really gave you a more well-rounded and branched out approach to massage and touch in general?
Absolutely. It made me feel like there was a more inclusive aspect in the profession than just this is clinical massage and this is energetic, or this is clinical massage and this is Eastern freestyle, or this is clinical massage and this is everything else. This is spa massage. Now, being able to say, you know what, there's a value, there's a connection. How do we make sure that we're not cutting off one portion of our profession because it doesn't meet what we expect it to be? One of the terms that I've been connecting with most recently is spa-linical. And it is the connection between spa and the clinical values of the spa. And if we can actually look at, okay, we're doing exfoliation, we're doing a full body scrub, okay, what is the clinical benefit to that? And how can we make sure that we understand that there is a value in not only the skin, but also the superficial lymphatic drainage and mobilization and all of these things that we want in the clinical side, we're actually doing in the spa, and we should be able to have that process and transition very effectively.
Oh, I kind of like that, Nathan, because I've always, and I've shared it here on this podcast before, you don't know what you're going to get whenever that a client walks into a spa environment. You might really quickly have to switch gears out of what people would consider, the stereotype we have of spa work. You might have to switch really quickly into the clinical hat and put that on. So I like that phrase. That's my first time coming across that, Nathan.
Yeah, so that came from a class that a couple of my educators at Educated Touch they're putting together. Actually, we just got approval for the first ASMR massage class from NCB, and it's talking about not the sounds and the ticking and all that kind of stuff, but actually what the central and autonomic nervous system are actually experiencing and being able to create a standard. And so being able to go back to spa-linical and say, yes, everything you're doing is affecting the central and peripheral nervous system. How and why? Now you can actually get a better comprehension.
Clinical. I guess a couple last minute questions about your entry level training, Nathan. Any specific textbooks, tools central to your learning that have stuck with you since then?
I'm looking to my left here real quick because I still have my entry level massage, Adam's Atlas of Anatomy. It's somewhere over here. And that was our anatomy book, was the old Adam's Atlas. It was the clinicals, the same thing they use in medical schools. And it has everything from pictures to diagrams to just kind of the layout of everything. And I'm so glad that we had this massive textbook because one of the things that dyslexia really gives you is you have to understand the why because that makes it settle in your brain so much more effectively than just trying to memorize names. And so many schools say, okay, you have to memorize these names and the origin insertion and the action. And that was not going to happen for me unless I saw the other aspects of where it fits and how it connects with its reciprocal and agonist and antagonist and how you can track those and that was what my brain needed was to be able to see the quads and the hamstrings in one and understanding as that mechanism why they affect the knee and how they have that slight rotational effect on the knee and being able to use those then helped me once again in that second term of pathology. But having the Adam's Atlas of Anatomy was the only textbook. Everything else was copied. It was copied in binders, and you knew that it was copied probably 100 times from its original copy. Because you'd see the outline and it'd be kind of skewed, and you'd be sitting there trying to take notes on it, but you knew you weren't writing straight because that page was nowhere close to straight. And it was really early days of before the textbook companies actually thought there was a value in massage therapy. It took a couple more years before we started seeing a lot of the great textbooks that are out there for massage therapy before we could actually start transitioning at that school into a textbook that would be more inclusive for what massage therapy can do.
You brought pathology up again, and I thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that story here, Nathan. Without struggling with it, you would not have some of these courses and some of these pathways that have opened up for you later on in your career. I guess I'm curious. I guess I have two questions, and you can tackle both of them if you want to. First thing that goes off in my mind with pathology is our pathology queen, our good friend Ruth Warner. I guess I want to know, was she on the scene at the kind of the same time, or was that a little early? And then two, do you think if you didn't have that pathway laid out with pathology that would eventually lead to these courses, do you think you would have found something else that would have fit that space for you in your career, Nathan?
Boy, Let's start with Ruth because Ruth, when I was in school, hadn't moved to Oregon. She actually was living in Utah at the time. And so when I first met Ruth at an AMTA National Convention, I heard what she was doing and I'm like, I like you. I need to pick your brain more. And we found ourselves again and again at different events, at different conferences. This was before she was the president for Massage Therapy Foundation. She was on their board of directors, and I was a chapter person, and I was connecting with her in so many ways because of my passion for pathology already. And she was showing and demonstrating so many great things and kind of always the one to poke me about research
Hmm.
and kind of what does the research say and where does that, and I'd be like, I don't know, how do I find it? I think she is the first person who ever told me about PubMed and really kind of opening up the public medical journal and kind of seeing where things were at. And this was still really quite early in my career to kind of go in and start figuring out why and how. That was really nice to kind of get some added support from Ruth. And Ruth is a dear, sweet individual who I love dearly. I still text her and then say, oh, sorry, that was supposed to go to Susan Salvo. Sorry. Um, and Susan has gotten texts that were supposed to go to Ruth. So I connect them back and forth, and I'm like, hey, I got a question here. Oh, sorry, I meant the other. And so that was definitely early days, kind of in my chapter days when I was Oregon chapter president, because she actually reached out to me and said, hey, I'm looking at moving to Oregon. I'm like, yeah. Then she moved to the coast, and I was like, oh, come on now, you can't move to Oregon without going to Portland. So that's Ruth. Would I have found something else? I believe I would have because a lot of the things when I'm looking at writing classes and writing a new course, there's so much to massage therapy that doesn't have to be focused on pathology.
Hmm.
My gua sha, American gua sha series. I have a added portion at the end that gets more directly into pathology-based gua sha treatment, but the early stage of how to use the tool is a lot of fun, and so I probably still would have written the American Gua Sha series without any of the pathology stuff and been absolutely fun. The structures integrated for functional movement, probably not. SIFM is really pathology based. It is your brain goes, I need a break, and that's why it's set up as 1 hour classes because it's 16 1 hour classes, and you can take the first hour and then take a break and not do the second hour, and you can come back for the third hour because we're getting into a lot of the kinesiology, the pathology, the structures, each of those different body parts. So it's like neck and head, and that's an hour, and we are diving deep, not only in that, but then in the treatment, and then having people practice it and kind of getting a little more depth. So I probably still would have done it, but my curriculum would have been completely different for sure, and my treatment style would have been completely different as well. I've worked on people who have had amazing pathologies who their doctor said you're just going to have to deal with this for the rest of your life. And if I wouldn't have done the research and the study and connected with it, I probably wouldn't have given them the relief that they were from the conditions they were having. And so to me, having that extra knowledge of how the body works absolutely opened doors for clients to feel better than what they actually, quote, according to the doctors, said that they could have felt. And relief of conditions that just were uncurable.
What I'm also hearing in that answer, Nathan, self-education and a drive to really better yourself in order to help others.
Absolutely. And you've got the two sides. Going and taking continuing education classes that are going to inspire and motivate you, but also self-education in being willing to open a book, being willing to open PubMed, being willing to have a question and not go, I don't know, but have a question go, well, but what if I did know? I should probably toss that one out there as well. My father, I love my father. Every time I talk about anyone in my family, I tell you how much I adore them. They're the best ever. My father would use a term that would drive us insane as children because we would say every once in a while, well, I don't know. And his default answer was, well, what if you did know? That meant I've got to look it up.
Yeah.
and I've got to find out. And back in those days, the encyclopedia was the thing because we didn't have Google. I'd pull out that encyclopedia and look up and it would say, nope, it doesn't here. It's by this other name. Then you'd put that one away and grab the A's and then pull that out and look. And it was tedium. However, with that same tedious nature, I learned you could understand and you could know. The joy when you go, I know something. I've learned something and I feel better that I can support other people in knowing. When they have that question, I can give them the support to go, wait a second, there is an answer to that. When people say you can't massage someone in the first trimester, I can honestly say, I'm so sorry that you're feeling that limitation. I know there's actually research that demystifies that there is actually benefit in massaging them in the first trimester. And they're like, what? Yeah, there's current research. So having that desire to learn absolutely has kind of helped in every aspect in every stage of my career.
And I get the sense that we've kind of lost that with having Google at our fingertips and in our back pocket.
I'm going to go the other direction. Yes and no, because the interest has increased because we have Google in our pocket. So then people just, they can do it so much quicker. So the interest in knowing something, however, the checking is the thing that is really kind of hurting people. And I think we're currently in 2026, I think by 2028, we're going to be in a transition stage. And the reason why I have to kind of put this into the future is AI is quick to answer your question with bull crap answers. Excuse my language. Because it will tell you, oh, well, here's the truth. And you look at it and you say, that is dumb. And so then you have to do your own check or ask it again and ask it in a different way. And it goes, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, you don't know anything, AI. I have to go back to a resource that's credible. I have to go back to my school books. I have to go back to this and that. And being able to point that out. And I use AI just as much as everyone else. However, I use it and say, wait a second, how can I vet this information and request for its documentation? So where did you get your information from? Pop, pop, pop. Oh, I made it up. Okay, well, I'm glad you made it up. Go away. But that I think there's going to be a resurgence in being able to have good quality resources, including published textbooks, which everyone say is going to go away and die. I don't ever see that happening, especially since self-publishing has increased. People want to be a published author and they want to connect with those different things. Yeah, I just got on a soapbox. I'm sorry. Let me get off that for you.
No, by all means, and I think you're right. I think that there is still, I mean, like you said, in the individual, there's still this desire to be published, to write, to share, and connect in that way, right? I don't think that's ever going to go away. And I might go in with you on that, Nathan. I think we are seeing AI evolve really quickly too. So, yeah, I think you might be on the right track there.
We'll see.
Tell me, when you got out of your entry level program, what was the next step for you? Were there any CE providers, pathways, school owners, board leaders, organizations that you really latched yourself onto right at the jump?
So my jump is multifaceted. So we're going to go from jump to jump to jump. So as soon as I graduated, I had just married my bride, and I was so excited because I had a career that could take me anywhere. So my wife and I got married in '99, and then went through massage school, married, all that kind of stuff. And so as we all connected and figured out that we could go anywhere, when I graduated from massage school and got my license, I sent my resume all the way across the country. I said, anybody who wants me, we don't have any kids, we're willing to go. And so at that point, I got an email back from Jackson, Wyoming, which Wyoming, I think, is still one of the states that is unlicensed. And so I got an email from a beautiful resort out there, and they said, hey, we would love to have you. We're getting ready to get into season. If you are interested, we need you to drive out for an interview or fly out for an interview next weekend, and then we'll have the interview and go from there. Well, once again, young married couple, no job. Actually, I did have a job. I had a couple of massage gigs that I was doing at a gym and at a naturopath's office and with chiropractor. I mean, I had several little things that I was doing, but I was like, yep, I'm going to clear my books and I'm going to fly out. Flew out, did the interview at this beautiful resort spa and loved it. I flew home and I was like, I don't know if they want me. I would be the only male massage therapist that they have. And they called me back and they said, yes, we want you to start the end of the month. And so I then moved with my car and everything that I could stuff in the car to Jackson, Wyoming, and my wife, who was working at an ear, nose, and throat doctor's office, she actually then gave her notice, and then her parents moved in a U-Haul with her across to Wyoming. And so we moved into a hotel room that had been converted into long-term hotel stays. And so in Aspen, Wyoming, you had this road that took you right up to Jackson Hole, because even now they say the billionaires are chasing out the millionaires in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, because it is so rich in that area that you just go to visit and then leave with all of your money gone. And so we had to live south, and so I had this beautiful drive through the woods to work at this spa. And so as I worked at this spa, we were like building this community, building this culture, and the big challenge that they had was trying to get people to take a male massage therapist.
Mm.
And so I said, what is it that you say when you're on the phone to figure out who you're going to mix them with? And they said, well, we have a male massage therapist. Are you okay with him? My brain started itching, and I'm like, there's a much better way to say this. Let's figure this out. And so I sat down with the receptionist, and I pretended like I was on the phone with her, and she got on she was saying things, and I'm like, nope, that doesn't work. Okay, let's try this. And so I'm like, well, what about we have both male and female massage therapists? And she's like, ooh, are you comfortable with both? And I'm like, yes. Yeah, that's... And so we started pushing that out, and my books started filling, because it wasn't, hey, we have a guy, he's a pervert, but are you okay with him?
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah.
And being the male massage therapist, when they'd be like, oh, I'll take a guy, then it was always the one who wanted to be beat up, wanted that extra, wanted me to stand on the wall and stuff my elbow into their traps or whatever else. So it opened up this door for them to kind of go, wait, we can have more male massage therapists. We've got to make sure that it's stabilized and structured. And we got a really great opportunity to like see that growth and development of the spa. That was also when my oldest son was born. So he was born in Wyoming. And as we were now newlywed couple, we had actually in that year and a half moved up to Jackson, Wyoming in a loft apartment that was about that big. And we realized that she was going to be home with the baby, and she was working at the bank, and she's like, I don't really think we can afford this with your pay. And so we actually looked at moving back to Oregon. And so that was like my early experience with spa and kind of connecting with. And that's where I had my first hot stones class and really kind of received a lot of great education. But also in that other side, the things that people usually negate in massage therapy education was the business aspect. The owner of the spa was always willing to talk to me and kind of give me some ideas in marketing and advertising, things that they were doing and why they were doing it. Even in the back of the house type stuff. If my schedule wasn't full, they would say, okay, Nathan, we want you to clean this and organize that. We had big, huge hydroculators for the herb wraps. And so it was then my job to not burn myself by emptying the hydroculator and putting new herb wraps in. And so I had like back of the house and business stuff was all kind of coming through to me and kind of getting me more progressed as a massage therapist than just my hands can do something really good, but how do I build that and go from there?
The Society of Massage Archives invites you to join us for a virtual book club and discussion circle, a monthly 90-minute virtual deep dive into Dr. Patricia Benjamin's book, The Emergence of the Massage Therapy Profession in North America, A History in Archetypes. This isn't your typical book club. It's a conversation where we'll read the emergence chapter by chapter, reflect on the stories, struggles, and triumphs that shaped our profession, and explore how the past informs our current and future circumstances. Discussion circles are moderated by SOMA's Executive Board of Directors, with special guest hosts and Q&A sessions with the author, Dr. Benjamin. Registrants will receive access to the ebook format courtesy of Sutherland Chan School of Massage in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Virtual meetings will be held on the second Monday of each month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Central, 4:30 p.m. Mountain, and 3:30 p.m. Pacific. Visit our social media on Facebook and Instagram, or our website at societyofmassagearchives.org to learn more and get registered today. We'll see you soon.
I think I have just one asterisk real quick, Nathan. You
Yep.
said when you got out of your entry level program, and because you had taken the national certification exam, you sent out your stuff all across the nation. Quick question, is that the promise, or was that the popular thought at the time of the pathway that national certification could work?
That was the hope. That was definitely the hope because many states had already gone into licensure and had active licensure. And so not knowing what I didn't know was kind of some of those states. I mean, in New York, I was like, hey, I send my resume everywhere. And New York had, they got my resume and were like, yeah, no. But I didn't know why I was being filtered out. Well, I didn't have those state licenses. Now, it was a select number of licenses in 2000, 2001. So it wasn't a huge aspect, but it was that I was sending it out to everywhere and I was willing to go anywhere. If they told me, okay, well, you got to get your license here, would have done it in a heartbeat. And I would have moved out to wait and get my license at whatever state it was because I was that hungry, because I was wanting to see growth. And Wyoming, the interesting piece with that spa was that they said, okay, either you need to have a state license in a state around us or you need to have your national certification. And so that they said it had to be both, one or the other. And for me, when I brought my Oregon license and they were like, oh, he's licensed and board certified, that there's no question about that his credentials are not meeting or that he's going to be inappropriate with any of our clients.
No, please carry on. I want to know, when were you introduced to the organizations? Because I know that's where a bulk of your career, that's where you've hung your hat for a while, Nathan.
Yeah, so that's actually right where that next piece goes. So my son was born, and my wife and I were like, we got to move back to Oregon. We've got family support in Oregon. Both her parents and my parents live in Oregon, so we were like, let's move back. So we loaded up the van, moved it across, and got back to Oregon. And that's when I started saying, I'm going to build what I am and what I do. And so at that point, I started looking at. So this was actually just after September 11th. 9/11 had just happened, so the bombing and everything was starting to slow down economically.
Yeah.
We were in Jackson, Wyoming when that happened, and I was actually folding clothes in the laundromat and looked up at the little tiny TV in the corner of the laundromat and saw that, and my wife was like, "Oh no, are you concerned? Should we move from Wyoming?" I'm like, "Wyoming?" She's like, the vice president at the time actually lived in Wyoming. I'm like, they're not gonna try and bomb the vice president's house in Wyoming. They're gonna go for a big city. That's silly. So as we moved back to Portland, we actually looked at, okay, where are all the places that I can work? And so the first thing was, I still had my Oregon license, so that wasn't an issue, but everyone was scared about bringing on more massage therapists because they didn't know if people were going to be getting massage. The first thing, there's a place in Oregon, if you've ever been there, it's called Plaid Pantry. This is the 7-Eleven for the Northwest. And it really does look like what it's defined as. It's plaid colored signs. It's a pantry. It's a hysterical little place, but I started working at the night shift at Plaid Pantry, and then I got a job at a spa in downtown Portland, Portland Center Spa, and the owner was just a little tired and a little sick of the economy hitting and not working with spas. And so he's like, the numbers are nowhere that great right now. Well, as I'm working night shift and then going and working at the spa during the day, that kind of created this dichotomy of me being constantly exhausted, especially since I was doing 3 days at the spa and then 3 days at a chiropractor's office in Gresham, Oregon, who Dr. Guerrero is an outstanding advocate and support. She was always good. And so I actually talked to the owner of the spa and said, if you're sick of it, are you willing to sell? And so I'm still in my 20s. I'm like, hey, let's do this. And he says, yeah. And he gave me an absurdly low rate. And I was like, that is great. Let me see how I can find money to do it. Because once again, still broke. My wife's mom's parents were retired and totally fine. And they're like, how much do you need? And I was like, really? $20,000 would help. And they're like, perfect. And so they funded, as the venture capitalists that they were, the process. So then I came back and said, yeah, I got you. And so I started at the spa. Well, in that transition back, and this is one of my favorite AMTA stories, I got a phone call from a guy named Ted. And Ted was the AMTA volunteer who was in charge of finding volunteers. And so anytime people graduated or became new members or moved in, he'd give them a call. Hey, I'm Ted from the AMTA chapter, just checking in on you. How are things going? Where are you working? Do you need any support? Well, he called himself the traveling masseur. So he was an out-call massage therapist. He has so many great stories. He had so many great stories. He passed several years ago. Outstanding, outstanding guy, and inspirational in so many ways. But he called me and he's like, hey, the Oregon chapter is actually going through elections right now. Are you interested in either becoming first vice president, third vice president, or secretary? I'm like, I'm dyslexic. You do not want me as a secretary. That I just got to put that out there right now. I said, but either of the other, I'm totally good with. And so he's like, okay, the meeting is at this day at this time. We'll see you there. I said, perfect. I'll see you there. And so once again, churchgoer, kind of business savvy, necktie, white shirt, suit. That's what I'm going to a business meeting in because it's a business meeting.
Yeah.
And so in the same time that I'm looking at buying the spa, I go into the AMTA Oregon chapter's meeting. They had just gotten done with a yoga training and they started the business meeting. My dear friend Glenneth Moyle, if you don't know Glenneth Moyle, she is the world of awesome. She's everyone's Kiwi mum. And she was a nurse in New Zealand before she came, and then she's been a massage therapist forever as well. And so she was the Oregon chapter president. And so I walk in a suit and tie and stand in the back of the room. She doesn't know me for anybody. And she's like, why is the IRS here to audit our chapter meeting? And so she's going through and talking about this and kind of going through and getting through the bullet points. And then she's like, okay, and the budget is set out. So anybody have any questions about the budget? Well, I'm looking at the budget. I'm like, you're budgeting for a deficit. So I put my hand up. She's like, oh my gosh, the IRS is asking about my budget. This is horrible. And so I asked and she's like, well, we're offering budget. And she rumbled out an answer that made sense, but it was like, okay. And it was just kind of get you off my back. And so then the next order of business was, okay, who's on the election ballot and that kind of stuff. And she's like, okay, I'm my third vice president. And so I stand up and she goes, I know who's doing budget next year. She goes through and she's like, oh, this is great because it was Glenneth Moyle and a couple of other ladies with an entire board of males. And we were all male massage therapists. So it ended up being Glenneth and her boys for many years after that she had... She was the queen bee that kind of helped out and kind of made sure that we were doing things right. And she helped myself, John Combe, Michael Ducart, Mike Blackmore, the crew of us guys who were like, you know what? Yeah, we're here to help. It just kind of opened that future. So as I started volunteering as third vice president, I spent a year as third vice president. And then Glenneth Moyle went on to the national board. So that position of president came open and no one else wanted it. And so I was like, I'll step up to president. That's fine. And Patty Glenn was like, Nathan, you'd be a great president. So yeah, let's work together. And so that was kind of in that transition. While I've got my spa open, I'm actually volunteering on that side. Now, the side benefit of that is I'm getting introduced to massage therapist for AMTA Oregon chapter, and I'm saying, hey, you know what? I've got a spa here. If you're interested, feel free to put your resume in and that kind of stuff. At that time, 2002, there was a pretty good rush of massage therapists that were coming through the career colleges and through this big growth in the process. At that same time, I'm like, you know what? I can't wean money off of the spa enough to actually make ends meet. And so I actually was working there, but I also started working at Ashmead College in Tigard, Oregon. And so I was doing the night shift teaching in the massage program. And it was also a moment where I started licking up my excitement of education. Because my mom, I didn't tell you much about her. My dad was a chiropractor, but my mom was an elementary school teacher. And so she was teaching first grade for almost 20 years. And so being able to kind of understand what my mom does in education and how she teaches and why, and really teaching elementary school kids is teaching adults. There's really no difference. Yes, we have more experience, but the excitement of a 6-year-old saying, how to spell, and the excitement of a 20 or 30-year-old saying, how to do effleurage is the same thing. And so being able to go in and start teaching in the evening, and that's right when I started going, you know what, I'm going to start teaching continuing education sometime because entry level was limiting to you've got to get curriculum that's going to help them pass their exam. Once they pass their exam, there's a lot more that they can learn. And the experience that I had, like in business and running my own spa and doing those types of things were things that I knew massage therapists needed to know because we came out of school not knowing. And so I started volunteering at the same time as owning a spa, at the same time as teaching in massage school. My brain was almost exploding.
Ed.
And my wife was pregnant with our second, with my daughter. She was coming up on a year and a half to 2 years, and she's now pregnant with our second. And at that point, I had grown the business enough. I was feeling fatigued from that. And so I was like, you know what? I have to look at some transition. And so I actually reached out to several people and said, hey, do you want to buy a spa that's successful? I've got a lot of stories in that first 2 years of the spa and kind of getting some inciting opportunities there. But just being able to sell that and wash it from my bank and going, I'm clear, it's running, and someone else can enjoy it. And I don't believe it's, well, maybe it is still running. I'd have to check that out again. But also at about that same time, the University of Western States, which is the chiropractic college in Portland, Oregon, it used to be Western States Chiropractic College, so that's what it was when I started, and then I went through the transition. They wanted to start a massage program. And they reached out to Minga Guerrero, who is the chiropractor that I worked with, and she said, Nathan, I need your help writing curriculum. And I was like, yes and yes. Writing curriculum for a university instead of teaching someone else's curriculum at this trade school, I will do that in a heartbeat. And so I started putting more time in at the chiropractor's office. I was closing out the books for the spa. I was writing the curriculum for the chiropractic college and closing out the classes at Ashmead. Once I got that closed and I started at the University of Western States, I found out that writing your own curriculum and teaching your own curriculum is amazing. Knowing what you know and being able to present what you know instead of having to try and figure out what someone else knew and what the textbooks say about it, just a wealth of excitement happened. At that same time, as I was now on faculty at the University of Western States, they allowed me to take classes there from great instructors who weren't teaching to massage therapists. And so I was able to take curriculum from chiropractic and manipulate it and say, no, the soft tissue manipulation side of this is this, and I can use that as a massage therapist without the joint thrust adjustment, without the structures that kind of allow for this extra piece. And so I started siphoning information into an effective way for massage therapists to do more than just effleurage the body and petrissage the muscle, but actually understand those next pages. At that time, soon after, they're like, Nathan, you're the only person on faculty who is not a chiropractor. You should come to school and become a chiropractor. And I was like, I don't wanna. Well, but then I actually talked to my dad at that same time. My parents were looking at going on a church mission. They went to Bulgaria for a church mission, and they said, you can stay rent-free in our house. And I was like, rent-free, full-time student, and practicing massage therapist. Okay, I can do it. So they went to Bulgaria, we moved into their house, and I became a full-time chiropractic student. In that first year, my brain as a dyslexic individual was swimming. I mean, it was a mass of challenge. However, one of those good things, one of those things that just blew my mind was the cadaver lab. Being able to get in and dissect a human body all the way down from top to bottom and have everything comprehend turned my brain on like none else. And so once I got through that first year of chiropractic college, I actually did a deep dive and a deep thought, is this what I really want? And I didn't. My heart was not 3 more years of this and I'll be successful doing what I want to do. I said I already knew I was a success. I was successful in what I wanted to do. And so being able to step away and say, you know what? I'm going to step away from this. I'm going to go back to Portland State University and finish up my bachelor's degree. And so I got my bachelor's degree in 2012 from Portland State in general sciences. And so my bachelor's in general science supported the stuff that I learned from chiropractic, supported my stuff as a massage therapist, and because it was Portland State, I was weird enough to accept everything that kind of came through in the massage therapy industry. And I loved it. And so that's kind of the early days in that progressionary state of kind of things were coming on really hot and high fire. I had actually let's see, I was on the board still as I was a student in chiropractic college for the Oregon chapter.
I'm hearing a lot of the times when things seem to click for you in your mind, Nathan, is when things are presented in a visual way for you, or a more tangible way than the written word. And you've mentioned your dyslexia. Do you feel like we need more, or have you seen a shift to where massage therapy is getting more visual learning aspects included?
So, neurodivergence in the massage therapy industry for me is probably just in the way that I look at it. When I see the population that I work with or the connection, I would probably say at least 75% of massage therapists are neurodivergent in some aspect. And it's something that in my studies of neurodivergence, socialization skills are part of that neurodivergence. Dyslexia, specifically in the neurodivergence, dyslexic individuals are usually more socially engaging and want to connect more with a person because they don't want to sit there and read something. They want to get to know you. And we read facial cues so much better than the standard simply because we're engaging in a way. Now, also, most dyslexics have a kinesthetic job, a hands-on work where they can actually demonstrate they can do stuff. If they're doing stuff, they're happy and they feel successful. And so when I'm looking at the massage industry, we have a huge need for tactile comprehension and association driven processes. And that actually, in that next piece of my life, shows representation that I connected that and we started seeing a high graduation rate and a high success rate for passing the MBLEX, simply because we were teaching not the written word, but teaching the application of the written word.
Yeah. Okay. It sounds like you've got a lot of spinning plates going on all at the same time. You've got AMTA Oregon chapter. You've got this huge transition. Well, family-wise, you've got two children, or at least a second one on the way. You've just switched from that first business to you've sold it, and you've switched from teaching.
Yeah, and so I was still teaching at the University of Western States while I was a student. I was teaching one class. I was teaching the ethics and business class. And so while I was a student and taking that class on, finally I decided to finish up my bachelor's, and that's when my second son, my third child, was born. And in that process and that progression, it really started saying, okay, where is my next big push? Once I got my bachelor's degree, I reached out, and this was early days social media, so 2012. I actually reached out to our friend Ruth Warner and said, hey Ruth, I want to become full-time in teaching massage therapy. Do you know anyone? And she's like, well, let me see. And so she put it on her Facebook feed, said, anyone looking for a massage therapist to teach massage therapy? I know this guy, he's really great. And she got a call from Savannah, Georgia. And this is Virginia College in Savannah, Georgia. And they're like, hey, we just had a transition at our campus. We're down to the program director. We need staff real fast. And she's like, okay. She did the connection. Instantly, they said, as soon as you can move over here, we want you here. And I was like, okay. Once again, I'm not ever concerned about a move. I moved a lot in my life, and even in that time that I was talking about in Portland, we moved multiple times in there. So I actually got my minivan with a U-Haul trailer behind it, and we stuffed everything we could. And my wife and kids stayed at home, and they stayed at her parents' house and lived with them for a while as I started moving and getting everything ready to go. It was fun. On the way over across the map, I actually stopped in Raleigh, North Carolina for the AMTA meeting. I had actually been on the board, the national board, and then dropped off the national board because I didn't make the election. Because at that time it was elect individuals for board positions. And so in that transition, I actually got on the ballot again and got onto the board. But that was the convention just before the election. And so I was once again shaking hands, talking to my old friends and new friends and trying to meet everybody. That's also when I went skydiving. That's a whole different story about learning to overcome your fears in life, because fear of heights was my standard. And so then from there, I went down to Savannah, Georgia, and I started teaching. And in my teaching process, I got to deal with another state license and kind of getting the Georgia license through. And they knew that I was teaching, that I had my bachelor's, and that I'm waiting on my license. And so all of that kind of went through. That also opened me up to a very important piece of connecting positively with state licensing board employees. The kinder you can be to them, they're not the board. They're not that. Kill them with kindness and be their best friend has always helped me with any state licensing board I've ever worked with since. And so I started working there. They had another quick transition. They brought on 2 instructors, and so we were doing all the education, and the program director was running things. We had the program director transition out, and so they asked me to become the program director and an instructor. And in Savannah, Georgia at Virginia College, I was like, I can't do everything, and I know my strengths and David O'Brien's strengths, and we have a lot of similar strengths. We need 2 other people with strengths. And they're like, okay, search. And I was like, yes! So I found a person. So David O'Brien was from New York and Las Vegas, so he had connections with education in both, and he understood what his limitations were. He was very clinically minded. He still is a master of teaching anatomy and physiology to massage therapists that make it make sense. And he's just outstanding at that. So I'm like, you got the A&P class without a doubt, and he's got Massage 1 because he can teach a model and a structure without any concern. Had a lady from Atlanta Beth Dodds, she was like, you know what? I have always wanted to live in Savannah because it's Savannah. And I'm like, would you like a job and live in Savannah? She's like, absolutely. And so she came out and moved to Savannah and started teaching some of the advanced massage classes as well as prenatal massage, because that was her specialty. That was her jam. And then we found another instructor from New York specifically, and he came down and he had lived down there for a little bit, and we were like, you're not a massage therapist in Georgia. I've gone through that process. I know how to get that taken care of. But you've got this advanced knowledge in pathology. Perfect. So we put him in. So we had a well-rounded team that actually set every class as they went through. They would hit David O'Brien first, and then they'd hit Beth, and then they'd hit Ryan, and it just ran through this process. And then I would always teach the ethics and business classes, because that was my jam. That was my, let's play. And so they got all 4 of us throughout their education, and we noticed that that first class that went through had a 100% pass rate on the MBLEX.
Wow.
And I'm like, let's see if we keep this up. And we kept it up until 1 student didn't pass in the entire time that I was the program director out there. And I allude that to, they had multiple styles of brains that they could pick. And I knew I was going to have students who would pick my brain about stuff that David O'Brien was teaching. There were students who would pick Beth's brain because they're like, I don't get this. They had multiple different visions and perspectives that they could actually align with for their own personal success. Last week, I got a phone call from one of our graduates, and she's like, hey, I've got this thing, blah, blah, blah. This is what I'm looking at. I'm like, perfect. Yeah, no problem. Let's talk to him. Let's figure that out. And she's like, I've never questioned if I could reach out to you. And it feels so overwhelming just to kind of go, yes, that was 2012 to 2015 that I was in Savannah, Georgia, running that program. And so it's been 11 years, and people are still saying, I know Mr. Nordstrom. I'm so excited. I can ask him any question anytime. And I'm like, yep, that's the way the world should work. And camaraderie and community in the massage profession is what brings us to that next stage, brings us to the next growth. Well, so I was in Savannah, Georgia when I was on the national board, and just before I became national president. So I was the last, I'm going to count myself on this, I was the last person who was personally elected to the board from the public. So they sent out the election. I ran unopposed, which pissed me off.
No.
Excuse the language once again, because I didn't want to be unopposed.
No.
Not that I wanted to beat someone, but I wanted people to have the option.
Sure.
I'm a big person. I'm a big advocate of having options and choices. If you don't have choices, then it goes to default. And I didn't want to be a default president. So, just as I was going through that election period, I had also had the Massage Therapy Foundation reach out to me. In Savannah, we actually had the Rock and Roll Marathon in Savannah as one of our events that the school would support. And so we would take students at 3 in the morning, we'd get them out to the Rock and Roll Marathon finish line, and as people would come across the finish line, we'd provide free massage. And so I started running and being the advocate for massage therapy for the Rock and Roll Marathon series. And so I was supporting that every year and getting the massage therapy side engaged. Well, I was working with the medical staff there, and we were having a heyday. We were loving it. One year, we had the students who were complaining so loudly. They got there in the morning, and I'm like, okay, if you guys get over 300 massages, I'm not sure on the number, I'm thinking it was 300. If you guys get over 300 massages at this event, I'll run next year's Rock and Roll Marathon. And they're like, okay. I really did not think they could get over 250. I was like, mathematically, that's not going to work. They're not going to get to 300. At the end of the day, I come together with the other faculty and the massage therapists who are around. I'm like, great job, everybody. You guys really helped them. Gosh, I heard it several times. Oh, my legs feel like legs again. Thank you so much. And, okay, Mr. O'Brien, how many did you guys get? We got 98. Okay, Beth, how many did you get? 104. Okay, and then in the medical therapy, crap, 370. Something. It was an absurd number. And I was like, how did you... Okay. I put that out and let people know that I have to run next year's Rock and Roll Marathon. However, I don't run. I have never ran. I didn't like walking fast. And so I then put myself out there for the year to train for the next year's Rock and Roll Marathon. Well, in that same process, the Massage Therapy Foundation had these bibs for Boston Marathon. And they said, why not get someone who hates running to run the Boston Marathon? Because his story is going to be more really connected with what standard massage therapists feel. Most massage therapists don't want to run a marathon, right? Here. So they then said, hey, your Rock and Roll Marathon's in February, the Boston Marathon's in April. Would you be willing to fundraise for the Boston Marathon? And I'm like, oh, you guys hate me, don't you? And so in 2015, I ran the Boston Marathon to fundraise, and I think it was $25,000 that we raised, $15,000 to $25,000 that we raised in that year, really getting groups on. Now, I also have these sleeves, so I bought these white sleeves to keep your arms warm. Anyone who donated to a certain level got their name embroidered on my sleeve, and they would run the marathon with me. And then anyone who was over a certain, I think it was $1,000, got onto this other sleeve, and their logo got embroidered on my sleeve. So as I went to Boston, I had just 2 sleeves full of people's names and companies that were supporting me for the Boston Marathon. I don't like getting emotional, but it was awesome to see how excited people were for me to run.
Oh.
I hate running. Even for the next year, I would be flying someplace and I would walk to the airplane just because if it's going to take off without me, it's going to take off without me. I'll just have to take the next one. Because my legs were like, nope running this year. It's not going to happen. And I've ran a little bit since then. But the key aspect was the support. And this was the same year as my president-elect year. So I had just become president-elect for AMTA. And then I am ready to put Georgia to bed and move. And so my wife wanted to move closer to Eastern Washington, where she had a cousin out there. Sure, let's go. I'm supported. I can do whatever I do anywhere. I already had my Washington state license. Because that was one, because it was right over the border in Portland to Washington. So I got that one early on. So as I moved back, I started working in a Healing Hands massage clinic where we were doing insurance billing and working on clients. And so all of that was great. I was running up on my national presidency. So I knew that I wasn't going to have a lot of time to expand my practice because I was going to be traveling so much for AMTA. And so I was national president in Washington State, working in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho after I got my Idaho license, and working in Pullman, Washington, then also after I got done, Moscow, Idaho.
A couple of things. I'm going to try to keep all my questions in my head. You mentioned that you were a little bit disappointed that you had to run unopposed for national office with the AMTA. Personally, for you, Nathan, would you prefer that over the slate selection system that's in place right now?
So I was on the board when that transition happened. So in my heart, I actually looked at the process, and there was win and lose on the slate selection process. One of the things that I think was the biggest win that I liked and didn't like all at the same time was I got elected by the general public. The presidency is now elected by the board. And I saw a win in that because a few years before I was on the slate, there was a person who was elected to be president who physically could not meet that need. But the general public had no clue. And so because there's a picture and there's a great history of their background, their health dynamics would not allow them to complete a presidency and grow. And that was something that we looked at and we went, there is an issue here on who knows what's going to be best for a presidency. And the board, being the ones who understand what's going on, electing the presidency from the elected board was something that I was like, it makes sense. I didn't like it, but it makes sense. And it's best practices in other nonprofits, in other organizations. The board itself does appoint who their president is going to be. So that made sense to me in that process. The slate process, looking at a success rate of it's going to default to a win, actually it makes sense. And the and is the piece that I think AMTA can look at and should probably look at. What it means to have a successful slate. For example, if you have a 80% or a 70% pass rate on the slate, that means that 25% said no, that this isn't good. And so that is a number. If it was just pass and fail, if it's at 50%, they're like, okay, well, 51% said this is a good slate. That's an awful number for here's the people we're putting in front of you, and only half of them think this is a valid. Now, FYI, every election, they look at that percentage, and it's significantly in the 90%. And so 90+% are saying, yep, that slate looks good to me. Now, the committee is charged with a lot of things to make sure that they're putting the right people on and making sure that that is a vetted process. So that committee is really great, and it is independent of the board of directors. So that kind of gives you some autonomy that they are members that are on that aren't the board of directors. So that kind of gives you a little bit more separation, which is good. Yeah, I like the pat on the back saying people want you, not people want y'all, which is a Southernism that I picked up from being in Georgia.
What year are we looking at, Nathan, if you can put us on the timeline at where you were elected versus your term as national president and when that slate selection change really went into effect?
Perfect. So 2012 is when I got back on the board, got reelected to the board. I spent a year off the board and then went back on. And then I was elected in 2014, and I believe it was 2015 that we actually looked at the slate selection and kind of implementing it at that time. It was just before I became the president. I was president-elect.
I'm loving this because I don't think I've ever heard the history of the slate selection process and when I didn't even know that it happened, in pretty recent history as far as we're talking.
I mean, 11 years.
Yeah. Moving on to the Massage Therapy Foundation, when they asked you to run, was that your first really like your first interaction with MTF?
Oh, good question. No. So on the AMTA National Board, oh yeah, I haven't told you any of this. So when I was first on the board, one of the things that I truly believed in and thought we need to get more money going into research. Once again, I've already talked to you about the tithing of time, but tithing of money is also another way to really kind of advocate for what you do. And so I looked at that and I looked at and reached out to Ruth Warner early on, and Donna, and so there were several people who were their presidents who I had connected with and said, hey, what is it that we're doing and what is it that we're not doing? For those early AMTA conventions, I said, there has to be a reason for people to get together and give to the foundation.
Mhm.
And they're like, sure, go ahead and do that. Okay, I can do that. Once again, you stick your foot in your mouth and then you've got to follow through. And so I'm like, what is it that I'm going to do that's going to get people excited? So I reached out to one of my friends in the massage profession, Angie Patrick. She was with Massage Warehouse at the time. Angie Patrick, if you don't know Angie Patrick, she is a round ball of happiness and joy and redhead through and through. So Angie Patrick's default word is yes.
Mm.
And she always wants to help. And so I reached out to Angie. I said, Angie, I want to have a game night for the massage therapy profession. I want it in my hotel room, and I'm just going to invite people. It's going to be donations to the Massage Therapy Foundation. She's like, I love it. What can I give you? How about a massage table for the winner? She's like, perfect. And actually, why don't we do a whole starter package, which is going to include the stool and the this and the that. I'm like, and so I actually then reached back out to the foundation. I said, okay, I've got a game night. It's going to be poker. And they said, nope. I'm like, it's a game night. It's a way to raise money. It's a fundraiser. And they're like, we can't associate it, the foundation, with poker. I'm doing it with or without you. And they're like, go ahead, but you better know the laws. So I started researching state by state what the laws were and each of the opportunities. And so that first game night sucked. That first year, I mean, I think I probably put in about $400 worth of stuff to get it going, and I think it made $50. So I gave them the $50. And I was like, okay. However, at the end of that night and for the rest of that conference, I was like, hey, next year's poker game. And they're like, well, what is it? I said, it's Underground Foundation. And they're like, the Underground Foundation? I said, yeah, the Underground Foundation. The foundation won't have us, but we're going to give them money. But we're the Underground Foundation, and we're doing a poker game on Friday night of the National Convention. And so let me reach over here. So I don't know if you can read that or if it's backwards. Underground Foundation Cup. And so 2010 was the first winner, and that was Dan Barrow. If you don't know Dan Barrow, he passed, but he was amazing. I mean, he was a insightful man. But Dan Barrow won in 2010. Tammy Felix won in 2011. Dan Barrow won in 2012. Dan Barrow won in 2013. Debbie Smoot, which is the wife of the AMTA president just before me, she won in 2014. Howard Freeman won in 2015, and it's gone on every year unless COVID was there. And we engraved the cup with their names. So it started in 2010. Then by the time I was national president, Ruth Warner would be like, FYI, there's a little thing going on Friday night that the foundation knows nothing about, but if you wanted to do something, go talk to Nathan. And she would give us advertising and motivation and kind of get the thing built up. And we were doing it in the hotel lobbies. We were doing it in back rooms, in restaurants, and we were just amassing these huge groups. And literally that night, so most years what I ended up doing was taking the stack of envelopes. Once again, I can't tell them how much to give, and that's part of the poker rules, is I give them an envelope. I say, you put in there whatever you want to put in there. That does your first buy-in for chips. And so they would give me, I'd have a stack this big of envelopes. And that night, I'd go up to whoever was president. I'd knock on their door. The door would open enough where the little hanger thing was. And then I would just slide it through the door and then shut the door behind me. And so I've started getting more lazy. So the next morning, I take the stack and I take it down to their booth and drop it at their booth. And they say, thank you. Initially, it was, no, we won't talk about it. It's poker. It's horrible. And now it's kind of become a cultural thing to say, okay, Nathan's fundraising. And once again, this was 2010. So that was 5 years before I ran the Boston Marathon. So I've been fundraising for the Massage Therapy Foundation in that time, but also since then.
I kind of love hearing this origin story of the Underground Foundation. Do you guys have like a website or a Facebook page where you keep track of the winners and letting people know, what's going on?
Yeah, the Facebook page is the free piece. I actually bought the website years ago and let it lapse because we don't need that. But yeah, so the Massage Therapy Foundation, if you search that on Facebook, you'll find, and you'll see this exact cup right there on the top of the page.
What are you going to do when you run out of space to do engraving, Nathan? If you
I already have. Yeah, no, I've got all of them gone, and then I have a couple of other golden little tabs that actually have the more current. So yeah, it's 11, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and then we didn't have 20 or 21. I still have to get engraved 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. And then this year we're going to have 26. So I think that's going to be three more tags. I may actually have to remove the base and actually make a larger base so that I can actually put everybody on it.
Oh, there you
So
go. Cool. No, I love that. And again, history, I love artifacts like that too. Let's see. I guess to my knowledge, all that leaves out as far as national organizations is the Alliance. Correct me if I've got that wrong though, Nathan.
So one of the things from becoming an AMTA national president is the next year after when you're the immediate past president, you're actually then appointed to the Massage Therapy Foundation board.
Okay.
And so I spent a year on the foundation board helping them kind of figure out the relationship between AMTA and the Massage Therapy Foundation and really kind of helping them build and finance. I was also on their golf committee back when they actually had a golf tournament. That's more stories, but on their golf committee. And I don't know, do you know the name Linda Solon Wolf?
Yeah, I've it rings bells at least. I don't think I've ever had the pleasure though.
So Linda Solon Wolf was on the golf committee, but she's passed once again. But she actually was such a big advocate for the foundation, especially like for the golf. But she came from the biofreeze direction of things. So she's actually the one who started the master's program at Biofreeze. So that was Eric Dalton, James Wazlowski, Bruce Baltz, Benny Vaughn. There was a whole advertising, the Masters of Massage Therapy, sponsored by Biofreeze. And she created that, and it created a huge marketing push for Biofreeze to be as successful as it was for so many years. And so she's been around and in that vein and connected in so many ways to really kind of push that. Now, she also knew about my underground foundation, and she was always giggling about that and connecting. She's like, you do stuff even when you're not supposed to do it. I said, absolutely, because it's the right thing to do, no matter what. You aim for the right thing to do, even if you're not supposed to do it. And so when I went to the foundation board, she also kind of gave me some pats on the back and said, Nathan, it's good to have you here. Well, that next year, I actually was appointed to the National Certification Board because during my presidency, another historical thing, during my presidency, the National Certification Board was having financial challenges because they were no longer used as a licensing exam, as the standard licensing exam. And so AMTA was looking at that and saying, how do we keep board certification to still exist? And so it was myself and the national office that actually sat down with Bruce Baltz, who was the NCB president at the time, and said, you need support. Let's bring you in and get you under the AMT umbrella so that you can actually get the support that you need to maintain financial stability for board certification. And so that was at that same time as I was doing that. And so then after I got off the AMTA board, then they said, hey, Nathan, could you be on the National Certification Board? So I got on the National Certification Board at that time. And then from there, hey, we have a vacancy on the CompTIA board. Are you willing to fill that vacancy until the next election? And I said, absolutely. So I became a commissioner for almost a year, just to kind of fill the spot until they filled that next piece. Yeah, I guess the only other one is the Alliance for Massage Therapy Education. Early on in AFMTE's history, as they started growing, because I was on the chapter when they actually ended the group that was the educators, the schools commission under AMTA. And so I knew that they were starting to poke their head out and start deciding that they wanted to do their own thing. Pete Whitridge was kind of putting a lot of that, and a lot of that crew was already formulating together. And so as they started doing that, I said, you know what, I'm volunteering. So I volunteered for their marketing committee early on, even before I was national president. And so I helped them out, kind of get marketing and advertising out. And then I was like, you know what, I can't do everything. So that's going to be the thing that drops off. Kim Alexander is an interesting, lovely individual. I actually worked with her in Virginia College when I was in Savannah, Georgia. She was actually my boss's boss at Virginia College. So she was the one in charge of the curriculum and management and that kind of stuff, and I was the program director. And so we got to know each other from there. But when she was on the national board, and then Donna Sarvello was on the Alliance for Massage Therapy Education's board as well. And so both of them said, Nathan, okay, come on, let's have you support here. And so I've been on their board now for 2021, so 5 years now, I guess, supporting and kind of getting things organized and structured. COVID really had a massive effect on their access and development, and the excitement of being able to get them back up to what we want them to be. I still think they can double in size and still not represent the profession enough. If anyone who's watching this wants to join the Alliance for Massage Therapy Education, afmte.org, it is not just for teachers, school owners, and continuing education providers. If you are aiming for those 3 directions of life, then please make sure to say, hey, you know what? This is a way to get in and collaborate with people who are already in that aspect and want to really grow and develop. There's my commercial for you.
We're all down for commercials and pitches here, Nathan.
Yeah.
By my count, there's only 2 national organizations that I'm not aware that you've worked with. It sounds like you haven't really been closely affiliated with the Federation, although you have a past relationship with Patty Glenn, or the ABMP. Does that sound about right to you, Nathan?
So the FSMTB, the Federation of State Massage Therapy Boards, because I've never been a director or on a state licensing board, I couldn't be a representative of a state licensing board. And as their membership are state licensing boards, I couldn't buy in. However, Deborah Persinger and I have a mutual friend, Glenneth Moyle. I don't know if either want this out there, but I'm going to say it anyway. Glenneth Moyle was a nurse in New Zealand, as I already mentioned. However, she was working in the hospital that Deborah Persinger was born in the night she was born.
Wow.
So being connected with Glenn and then having Deborah Persinger come in, instantly we kind of had a camaraderie and connection. And so when they were doing some of the exam updates, they asked me to be on the committee to work on the updates of the exam. So I helped out there. And then for ABMP, I've been on a slew of their podcasts. We've done different events and connected in many, many different ways throughout the time, and all of them are just lovely people. I've been to a good chunk of their school forums, which is coming up, but I won't be there this year. But yeah, so I've engaged with all of them. It just depends on how. There is one other group that I'm excited to be working with that we've been engaged. The Massage Industry Council on Ethics. And Massage Industry Council on Ethics is a bunch of us ethics geeks. The one who's most notable is Cherie Solon-Moe and Ben Benjamin. And so we're Laura Allen's on there. And so there's this group, and once a month, once every other month, we get together and we talk about the ethics standards and creating documents that will have a professional standard for massage therapy as a profession to kind of put out there, and eventually it'll get all published and that kind of stuff. But it's a crew of ethics geeks that like to do what we like to do.
First time hearing about them, Nathan. So
Nice.
Let's get the word out a little bit more on this.
Their word's going to come out when we finally publish, because that's the key piece. We know that ABMP, Massage Magazine, Massage Therapy Journal have said, yes, just let us know when you've got something and how we want to publish it. But we want to get, none of us want the credit for it. And that's why we created a group to say, hey, it exists. Here's the standards to just kind of move forward. So yeah, just fun groups that you participate in.
Cool. Excellent. Well, it sounds like you've got the whole gauntlet of massage therapy under your belt, Nathan.
The profession has infected me, and I appreciate it.
I've eaten up a lot of your time today, Nathan. If you're ready, let's go into some closing thoughts.
My own closing thoughts actually come from a couple of different directions. The first one is the title of the book that I'm working on, When Your Passion is Your Profession. And it's talking more about the challenges that you have and the things that you're willing to give up because you love what you do. I've been in this scenario my entire life. I love what I do, so I'm more than willing to put my own comfort on the back burner. I'm willing to run a stinking marathon because it's for the better good of the profession. There are some trips and some falls that come when you love what you do and you're willing to step out of your comfort zone to do stuff. And so making sure that you're holding true to those standards is important, but making sure that you get out of your comfort zone, because your comfort zone is your biggest prison. It's also your smallest prison. And so if you're only doing it because it's comfortable, you are going to miss out on so many amazing opportunities. The stuff that I talk about, the things that I've done, have all been because I was willing to get out of my comfort zone. Skydiving was definitely not in my comfort zone, but I did it because I knew I had to do something. In that adventure, we were waiting for the planes to go through and to pick us up and take us up. And my friends, we were all massage therapists. We actually started doing research on the ground. What does massage do to our heart rate as we're freaking out because we're going to jump out of a plane? And we put all onto an Excel spreadsheet and we were like, this is cool stuff. But it's because we were interested. Be interested, be passionate, and find something that may annoy you just a little bit and find a little bit more out about it. Because you know what? It may be your next passion. It may be that next thing that motivates and inspires you. I don't know if I would be the person I am if I didn't find out what I had failed at and decided to make it better. Let it be a class, let it be volunteering. I was an awful volunteer at the beginning. However, I've worked with every single group simply because I want to see growth. The movie Yes Men is a comedy, but you know what? I live by a portion of that value that if you can say yes and improve yourself, you're going to take to that next great success.
I love it. I want to know, Nathan, if we close our eyes, if we take a deep breath, and I ask you, what are you most proud of in your career? What comes up?
The community I've built. It has to be the ability to pick up my phone and find probably 3,000, probably closer to 5,000 massage therapists just in my phone. And I actually early on I was smart enough to put LMT next to every single one of them. And so if I'm like, hey, you know what, I need to know what someone else thinks about this, I'll go in and I'll put LMT and I'll just start scrolling. I'll be like, ooh, haven't talked to them for a while. Clicked on them, see if they answer. If they answer, hey, I got a question. I'm looking at doing this, looking at this, that, whatever it is, and being able to get their 2 cents on it. And they're thankful that I called because they know my interest is the better good. We've talked about Ruth Warner several times, Susan Salvo. We've talked about Ben Benjamin. We've talked about these names who are the published authors. Sandy Fritz. All people that I don't feel like I could stand next to. I feel like I'm still looking up to them. However, they tell me, Nathan, you're doing such great stuff. And I go, oh, thanks. Shucks, just me. And when we push together, people start recognizing the opportunity that we have. So it's the quality of people, but even the quantity of people. Having a community together is outstanding.
I couldn't agree more, Nathan. And that answer kind of goes into my next question for you. If you could select and record one historical figure's account of massage, who would you choose and tell me why?
Holy crap. Actually, I'm going to go with someone who is with us first. This will be your challenge. I took the next question first. That's fine. So I would suggest Gleneth Moyle. Gleneth Moyle is the person who she mentored me in so many ways. She was a mentor to Patty Glenn. She was a mentor. She is a connector of connectors. And she has a world of knowledge and her brain is still actively engaged. She is outstanding. So that would be the one that I would say definitely I would want to see. As for people who have already passed, oh, there are so many. I think John Barnes.
Hmm. Yeah.
When I was the AMTA Oregon education chair for a period of time, my first continuing education class was going to John Barnes. And it was a massive, huge, I mean, there had to have been hundreds, probably 300 or 400 people stuffed into this room, both massage therapists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, everybody. And at the end, I went up to him and I said, hey, I'm a volunteer for the AMTA Oregon chapter. Would you be okay if I interviewed you for the newsletter? He says, sure, here's my information and feel free to call me. And I was like, I literally just got gold on this massive person who you just bow down to in the massage industry. And so I had an interview with him, and he was so connected, engaged, and happy to just talk and just to be with people. That experience to just kind of get more on his history and to get more on kind of that direction, I think would have been great to document.
Do you still have that article, Nathan?
Maybe. If I don't, it's because it got thrown out with like massage journals from 2000 or 2001. I'd have to look for it. Maybe.
All right, let's
If
hope.
I do, I will take a picture of it and send it over to you so it can be in the Society of Massage Archives.
Yeah, please, anything you want to. We always accept things like that.
If you have one thing, if you have a picture of the Massage Masters, the BioFreeze Massage Masters advertisement, I've
Mhm.
been looking for that. And
Oh,
so if you find something in a magazine or something, just send me a picture. I would be a happy, giggling little boy.
all right, let me see. Let's put some of our people on it, see if we can come across that anywhere, Nathan. Last two things, Nathan, if you have time for it. What are you up to these days? How could listeners learn more about you, your work, connect with you, or support what you're up to these days?
8 years ago, I started with Hand and Stone Franchise Corporation, and I left last November of 2025. And that was that moment of, wait a second, what is it that I want to do? And where do I want to be in the next 25 years? And a lot of that opened up to, I love teaching continuing education and engaging and inspiring massage therapists and anyone who's interested. And so when I started talking about the book, I've been working on that. That probably won't be published until 2027 or 2028, but it's not going to be for massage therapists. It's going to be for every passionate individual for their profession. But Educated Touch is my business, and I have 6 massage therapists who are educators who teach continuing education, and they're writing their curriculum, developing their curriculum, and teaching across the country. I'm teaching with both AMTA chapters and other groups that are in the profession, but also the competitive massage therapy circuit. That's something that I didn't talk much about, but I'm a judge for them. I helped them create their Excel spreadsheet for grading to make sure that there's a unified structure to get there. I've been to Denmark, Copenhagen, Denmark a couple of times, both lecturing as well as competing once and being on the international judging circuit. So you can usually find me on social media, kind of either talking about really how important goals are and setting goals and developing goals, but also just stuff about the massage profession here and there, how to grow and how to develop. If you're interested in learning more about the classes that I teach, educatedtouch.com, as well as the stuff that I'm putting online, which is educatedtouch.thinkific.com. And we go through and create all new classes and new ideas and new development, both for massage therapists on their own practice, as well as those who are either working in a franchise or those who want to be working in a different area than what they are, kind of finding that right development and right growth there.
Say it one more time for me, Nathan. Did you say thinkific?
Yeah, it's the combination of think and terrific, right? Educatedtouch.thinkific.com.
All right, I love that. You've taught me two new words today, Nathan.
Yes.
All right, final thing. Is there anything we didn't cover that you would like to add? The mic is all yours, and I mean this sincerely. Take as much time as you want.
Our profession is having plenty of challenges. And I think the biggest challenge is thinking that we're isolated or that other people, because they disagree with us, are wrong or awful. We can disagree and still have a passionate support for each other. I have worked, as has been said, with every acronym out there, and they don't all agree with each other, but they all know where I come from and that I am there to support the benefit and the development of the profession. If we can have optimism, if we can have a kind heart and speak positively of those around us, even when they disagree with us, or counterbalance our own personal progression, or make things harder for us. Once again, going back to, I had to take pathology twice. I could have been mad at the instructor and said, "You failed me on purpose." But by the time I got done and a couple of years later, I realized he was my saving grace. He made things harder for me. By making things harder for me, I can take that strong moment and make things better. Don't be afraid of other people. Don't be afraid that they disagree with you. Realize that there's a purpose in all things. And by making yourself better and stronger, and listening to other people's perspective, we can understand that there are other ways and other things that need to be done or can be done better. Because guess what? No matter how much we work, we can always do things better.
Amen. That's wonderful, Nathan. I feel like we should let that sit for a moment.
When I was in college, they said, your profession should be a preacher.
Yeah.
And really, I've succeeded that. Yes, I'm not a paid clergy. I did do one wedding. So I have two books. One book that I haven't touched for a long time, which was Fully Exposed Ethical Dilemmas. And that book is going through ethical situations. And I have a co-author on that one, Adam Parrott. And he asked me if I would go online and get my online clergy so I could wed him and his wife. And so I have officially become an online minister of some sort. So I guess that fulfills that half of my life. But truly, when I'm teaching and when I'm presenting, I strive to end on a motivational, inspirational moment and help people understand life. Life is good. There's so much that we have that if we focus and love each other, nothing can stop us.
Yeah. I could go on talking to you forever, Nathan, because I feel like we've just barely scratched the surface here. But I do want to be mindful of our time, and I want to thank you for joining me here and the Society of Massage Archives today.
Kirby, thank you so much. And I feel honored to be able to be a part of the archives. That feels weird. Once again, 25 years and now I'm archived. As long as I keep my pulse, I'm gonna be keeping going, and hopefully we'll have to have a follow-up interview in the next 25 years.
There we go. Let's go ahead and set a date for that now, Nathan.
Awesome. 2050, got it.
Yes.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider donating to the Society of Massage Archives so we can continue to bring you this episode and other resources to fulfill our mission of preserving and integrating the historical knowledge of massage therapy's professional advocacy and traditional techniques to guide and enrich our contemporary practices. Thank you. You have been listening to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives. You can learn more about the Society at societyofmassagearchives.org. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. Do you know someone whose hands have helped shape the practice of massage? If you or someone you know would make a great guest for future episodes of this podcast, please email the Society at societyofmassagearchives@gmail.com. Society of Massage Archives, all one word, @gmail.com.